For the oil change, you want to remove the panel on the passenger side. Loosen your dry sump fill. You want to remove this cap. Kind of hard to get to. You then want to remove the dry sump cover. There's 3 10mm bolts. And then you have access to the drain bolt right here for the dry sump. So now I'm going to drain my dry sump tank. This is a 12mm bolt. I've already broken it loose. I just have a block of wood to support my gallon jug. And let's see if I can do this without dropping the bolt and making a mess. And I wouldn't leave this unattended. Once it starts filling with oil, it could shift and make a mess everywhere. So it's down to a couple of drips. I'm going to reinsert the dry sump reservoir drain plug. And 2 quarts came out of this, just for reference. And then I'll reinstall the cover, the dry sump reservoir, and drain the block and change the oil filter out. Okay, so if you've never done this before, it's a little tricky. I'm on the passenger side here, and you can see the oil filter there. And that Allen head bolt with the paint marking on it is the drain. Okay, so I'm on the driver's side. I know it says to warm up your engine so the oil drains, but to get to this oil filter, you either have to drop the skid plate or get your hands through the headers. So if you're going to go through your hands through the headers, Just make sure everything's nice and cool. And this is where my cup style oil filter comes in handy. So I'm going to break that loose. And thankfully this wasn't put on by a gorilla. It was fairly normal to break loose. See if I can get some better lighting in here. There you go. And then I'll just unscrew this by hand. Got to use your right hand on this. Left hand's too awkward. And now to fill with oil. So just FYI, 2.6, a little over 2.6 quarts came out. So I'm going to refill. And the oil I'm using is Pennzoil Ultra Platinum Full Synthetic 0W40, made for automotive use, along with engine butter. And I'll explain why I'm using an automotive oil versus a JSO MA. Let me get this started first. So the only thing that would require JSO MA in the engine is the starter clutch. The starter clutch is a one-way bearing, and it's made of steel. It's not friction plates like in your wet clutch. So it's not going to absorb these additives. Worst case scenario, if this oil is too slippery, when you go to start your engine, that starter clutch one-way bearing could slip and it'd have a hard time starting. I would not use an engine treatment that treats the metal, because that could get embedded in the one-way bearing. But worst case, if this has too much friction additive, you can simply change it out and put a JSO MA type oil. My thing is, on startup, you're going to have those additional friction fighting additives that should help spin the motor up a lot easier when it's cold versus a JSO MA oil. So this is going to be something controversial we can argue about, but I'm giving you my argument points. The one-way clutch for the starter only engages for 3 or 4 seconds. It's not like that friction surface is constantly being engaged while the engine's running. So I'm going to try, see how it runs with the automotive oil along with engine butter. Now, engine butter is wet clutch safe, so it doesn't have additives that permanently bind to the surfaces. So we'll see. Got 1 quart down. I'll add the 2nd quart, and then I'll add my engine butter, which is 2 ounces per quart. So I just did my first break-in oil change, and the stock YXZ dipstick is inaccurate. I've put 3 quarts of oil in my system, and no matter how I check it, and I'm very familiar with checking a dry sump, a Yamaha dry sump system. No matter how I check it, I cannot get the oil to register on the dipstick. And there are guys who are putting 3.5 quarts in their oil system because they're trying to get the oil to register on this dipstick, and they're overfilling their oil. As a result, that oil is going to get blown into your airbox. So what my solution is to buy the RMAX dipstick and use that. So I have 3 quarts in here. This is a cold engine. And we all know you're not supposed to screw this in all the way. But for those guys new to dry sump, this is going to be a little bit better method, I think. So on a cold system, it's barely on the dipstick. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to warm this up to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, let it idle for 10 seconds, and then check it and see where it's at. Okay, just came back from a ride. I've already wiped out the dipstick. All right. See if you can see that. It's right on the money using the RMAX dipstick. So, and this extension that made for the RMAX fits under the cover too, so I'm just going to leave it on there. So, the solution to proper oil levels on the YXZ is to use the RMAX dipstick.